I love seeing in your Zoom windows tonight all of the Christmas lights and the candles. And we're going to talk about light um, and the darkness also that makes the light possible. Um, I want to begin with what Jan Richardson says about this. She says, I can't tell you how the light comes, but that it does, that it will, that it works its way into the deepest dark that enfolds you, though it may seem long ages in coming or arrive in a shape you did not foresee. How many of us can look back on our lives or even on Christmases past and think about how light has come to us in shapes we did not foresee? It's maybe in some really unexpected way. Maybe it took us a while, maybe years, to understand that something that happened to us was actually light, was actually transformative in our lives. Sometimes it takes us a while. I think it's Mary Oliver that says that someone once gave her a box of darkness, and it was a long time before she too understood that it was a gift. So I invite you tonight on these, this is such an emotionally packed night. We have so many memories coming up of this night. I'm thinking about, again, Jan Richardson invites us into Advent as an opportunity not just to experience Emmanuel, God with us in the present moment that is shaping our future, but also to step in and to step back into those memories. She talks about how Advent is a time of deep memory and deep recollection. And it's into these stories that we have been stepping during Advent. From the beginning, from the first angelic appearance to Zechariah in the temple when he's having his big once in a lifetime day, and he comes out unable to speak because of what he has experienced, because he has encountered the messenger angel Gabriel, and light and strangeness inside the inner sanctum of the temple as he goes to light the incense. And then we have Gabriel showing up again with Mary and with Elizabeth, and now tonight we enter into this story and sort of the culminating story of Advent with this light that's happening out in the middle of nowhere with the shepherds. And so I want you to think about, I think it's the book of Hebrews that talks about how we may have entertained angels unaware. I want you to think about those angelic presences in your life. And maybe you never had one that was that radical or that upsetting, but maybe you too have experienced the presence of the holy in some special way, or in some way that you felt like was an angelic appearance. So I want you to think about that. I think we also have a habit of thinking about angels, like the many of the artists, have portrayed them like as little pooty little children, or and some of the Hebrew Bible stories of angels are just right down upsetting. They're they're stories of they have lots of eyes, like they're covered with eyes, or these wheels that are spinning. And obviously, we're trying in these cases, or the writer was trying to, was struggling to find the words to describe what he was seeing. And I think, too, some of us, just, when we have these experiences of God, we try to explain them, and we're like, well, it was like lights. There was lights, or there was a sound, or there was a something, and there's a struggle to find the words. And so tonight we enter into this story in the fields with the shepherds, and there's a great struggle to find the words for what's going on here. Because not only do we have one angel showing up, we have what is translated as a multitude of the heavenly host, which the word here, let me see if I can find it. I think it's stratia. Yeah, an army of celestial lights. Stratia is what this translates to. These are ordinary folks out in the fields tending their flocks. If you've ever been out in the wilderness at night when there's no light, I mean, you think about it. This was back in a time when you would not have seen a bunch of you would not have seen airplane lights and city lights and all of that. It would have been dark, and maybe there was a fire, hopefully, but we don't know what it looked like. But can you imagine this stratia, this army of celestial lights, showing up for these folks and making this announcement? I have always taken this announcement being made to shepherds. Notice that, they didn't choose to show up at Herod's palace. They didn't choose, even though Caesar Augustus is mentioned and Quirinius, who was the governor of Syria, or they're mentioned in this story because Luke's a historian and loves to set things in time. And we're fortunate that he did because, we have historical verification of some of the things in this story. Um, but it's interesting because, we're looking at history here in some ways, and then we're also struggling to find the words in other ways. And there were shepherds out in the fields, and I think it's such good news that these celestial lights, these angelic beings, came to them to make this announcement because it just goes to show us that normal, everyday folks like us, if you're feeling unimportant tonight, normal, everyday folks like us can have an important role in the unfolding drama of giving birth to the light of Christ in the world. We talked the other day about participating in this birth process with Mary, about being Theotokos, about being uh, Theotokos means God bearer in Greek, about participating in this with her. And Rachel Held Evans talks about how her womb was a place where heaven and earth met. It's a great question for us to ask ourselves tonight. How are we going to be a place where heaven and earth meet in the world? How are we going to give birth to the light of Christ in the world? How are we going to be the hands and the eyes and the kingdom builders of God in the world? These are all questions that we need to be asking ourselves all year long, not just during Advent. So I want you to be on the lookout tonight. You may not get a stratia or an army of celestial lights, although some of us have got some really nice lights in our Zoom windows and candles and such. But I want you to be on the lookout for that inbreaking of the holy, for this good news. The word is evangelion, the good news that's coming. What is good news for us this evening? For I've been holding space for a lot of you, and this has been a tough Christmas. It's been a tough Advent season for many of us. It's been a tough Advent season for a lot of us. We don't know what things are going to look like coming up in our nation. We're concerned about that. We have a lot of very personal struggles going on in our lives. I think another piece of really good news in this story is, and I think it's Nadia Bolz-Weber that talks about how, a lot of folks talk about how we're trying to take Christ out of Christmas, and she talks about how important it is that Herod is in Christmas, and that it's important that Caesar Augustus is in Christmas. I think she just says Herod, but I'll throw Caesar in too. I think it's important that these folks are in.
Oh yeah, I want you to do.
Can I ask everybody to mute, please? All right. Getting some weird noise. But I think it's important that we keep Herod in Christmas and that we keep Caesar in Christmas, because this too shows us that Jesus came into a world where things were less than perfect, where there was oppression, where there are oppressive regimes, and maybe leaders who didn't quite have the best interests of the people at heart. And I think it's important that we remember that Jesus came into the world in this situation when we find ourselves in situations like this too. Many of you have shared with me you're very concerned about the wars going on in the world, about the violence in Gaza, about the war in Ukraine, about the many. There's just so much violence around us. We have so much violence in our hearts and in our nation. There's a story associated with Christmas called the Massacre of the Innocents, where Herod actually. We have no historical recollection of this, but it would have been in keeping with Herod's personality to order something like this, because he killed a lot of people. He's been threatened very, very easily. And so I think it's important for us to here we are in a nation where things like Columbine and Sandy Hook and these kinds of school shootings take place, where we have our very own version of the massacre of the innocents. And so I think it's helpful for us to understand that Jesus showed up in this world in the first century that was less than perfect, that was violent, that was problematic in all kinds of ways. And yet the good news drops in to this place, just like the good news can drop in with us and in us in this present moment. I hope tonight that Emmanuel, God with us, God in the present moment, shows up for you in all the ways. And if you are having, trouble with the joy to the world parts, if you're struggling tonight, I invite you just to follow your curiosity and to be open. And hopefully, that very light and the nurturing darkness that gives birth to it will show up for you. That is my prayer. Amen.